DC. My name is Akenji Ndumu, and welcome to Africa Now, your weekly radio collaboration of peoples, voices, and perspectives from the continent of Africa. On this week's edition of Africa Now, we go to Somalia to examine the situation in that country after the pullout of Ethiopian troops who have been occupying the country with support from the transitional federal government, which itself saw the resignation of its leader just a few weeks ago. The situation in Somalia as the Islamic Courts Union mounts resurgence, and the tenuous hopes of the Somali people on Africa Now. And later on in the program, we visit Gabon, where anti-corruption activists have been arrested by the ruling government of Omar Bongo. Activists from Publish What You Pay USA and Publish What You Pay International have been fighting to get these released and have been getting support from the U.S. Congress. The fight of anti-corruption activists in Gabon later on. And also, we go locally here in Washington, D.C. to Howard University to examine a Pan-African Youth Conference being organized in the coming weeks. And we will speak with one of the organizers about their plans and their goals for organizing a Pan-African conference focused on young people. And also later on, we'll have a photojournalist, a local photojournalist, who just came back from the eastern part of the DRC, Congo. She will talk about her experiences there and what spurred her trip down to the eastern DRC. All that today on Africa Now. Welcome back to Africa Now here on WPFW 89.3 FM, as we are always ushered in by the trumpet of Hugh Masekela to this edition of the program. First up, Somalia. Now, a few months ago, the ongoing situation in Somalia, which in the early 90s, as a matter of fact, was for a decade and more, was a nation without a government. The government of Somalia was based outside of the country, Nairobi, Kenya. But under support from the U.S. government as well as Ethiopia, the transitional federal government was formed that took control of Somalia after a coalition of Islamic courts, known as the Islamic Courts Union, had control of the country. Now, the situation between the Islamic Courts Union and the Somali government is one that's been tenuous and one that has also resulted in warfare and in warfare. And now the government of Yusuf Abdullahi, who recently resigned as head of the transitional federal government, and with the pullout of Ethiopian troops from the country and the resurgence of the Islamic Courts Union, puts the future of this troubled country back into focus. We will be joined by two guests today to talk about prospects for peace in Somalia. First, I would like to welcome in studio Mr. Mohammed Ali, who is the chair of the Somali American Peace Council. Mr. Mohammed Ali came to the U.S. in 1982 and is a graduate of the University of Maryland at College Park. And he has served both the U.S. and Somalia in Operation Restore Hope. And he has worked both in the corporate world and in the D.C. government. He is the chairman of Somali American Peace, the Somali American Peace Council, which itself is an organization that works towards a union of like-minded Somalis, groups, communities, and individuals to focus on the plight of Somali people. Mohammed, welcome to Africa Now.
Thank you, Kenjaf. Thank you for inviting us. I appreciate for giving us a chance.
Now we were supposed to be joined by another guest, Mr. Abdul Kadir, Mr. Abdul Kadir with another organization, but we are still trying to hail him. Once we get him, he will join the program with us. Now, Mohammed, of course, it seems as if, day by day, Somalia, it's changing day by day.
That's true.
Now, from the early 90s, of course, we had a situation where Somalia was termed as almost as the Badlands, as a lawless nation. And then the Islamic Courts Union came in, and then the transitional federal government came in. And now the president resigned, and the Ethiopian troops that are supporting that government are backing out. What is precipitating this new motion of events?
First of all, I would like to thank our creator who gave us the victory from Ethiopian troops. Ethiopian troops are not being mentioned that they lost this war like we did in America with the Vietnam War. So that's, first of all, we have to thank him, because their plan was to make another Palestine thing where the Somali kids in 50 years from today throwing stones at helplessly with their big tanks. So that's one good victory there. What really brought is people who really resistance. People get together and fight. Nobody wants to be occupied. If anybody comes to the U.S. trying to occupy us, I'll be the first one taking a gun to defend my country, my new homeland country. So that's the reason they left. They didn't left because somebody welcomed them with flowers as they were expecting.
Indeed. Well, there are a lot of imperialists that go into nations expecting to be welcomed with flowers.
Yes.
But let me ask, from your perspective as a Somali, what do you see as, of course, the Ethiopian Somalia neighbors, and there are people who are who have a long history together. What do you see as the intersecting point of Somalia and Ethiopia, and why both countries have a strong interest in each other?
Well, I hope we have to learn the mistakes, because European countries used to have the same thing we are having now in Africa, all this fighting, whether it's Angola or Congo, or Somalia, or all these other things, the neighbor countries interfering, and they become peaceful together. So we need to learn from them. We need to be good neighborly and respect each other and cooperate. One of the main problems in Ethiopia is that they are landlocked nation. So when Eritrea was there as a nation transit for 10 years, rather than giving their independence, they say there's no such thing called Eritrea. There is no way in the world you can force people something else. If in my opinion, if they would really give a real freedom to those referendum, those people, they would have joined them. The same thing now in Somalia. They want to have an access. They're actually dividing Somalia, and they succeeded. There's a part called Somaliland. There's a part called the Puntland, and all this is nonsense. We really need to bring our country to be united, to go back together, and the international community is working with them the same bad situation. So we have to respect each other as neighbors. We have to respect them, and they have to respect us.
Now, when we talk about Somali unity, of course, you talk about these different regions of essentially the same peoples. At the same time, one of the ways in which they characterize the capital Mogadishu was that it was governed by different clans. Now, what we see then are these different elements that hold sway in Somalia. These so-called clans, the Islamic Courts Union, the federal government. How exactly is power organized in Somalia, and how do people come together in a way that can foster peace between all these different groups?
Unfortunately, what happened in Somalia, there was a drainage of resources, because the U.S. goes way back 50 years ago, when the Cold War, Somalia was the most important place to put your military base. So the Russians had that opportunity. When the Somalis kicked them out, Carter was there. So the Americans took over the military base.
Jimmy Carter.
Yes, Jimmy Carter. And they used to pay both nations at least $50 million worth of military support. All these guns, I don't know there's any African nation that produces any guns. So it's been brought. So the problem goes also partly the Western powers and the Eastern powers when they were fighting over the Cold War. That's good. We had a dictator at the time called Siad Barre, and regardless of all human rights abuses, these governments were supporting him. I used to give an excuse to my new country when Somalia went through the civil war. Why they didn't help us, because U.S.
Your new country, the United States.
Yeah, United States of America, because the U.S. was busy with the Gulf War first when George Bush the father was there. But I really come to know they were really not, because we helped them during the Cold War. They're supposed to help us. Unfortunately, they helped in the same event with this current Malis regime in Addis Ababa, but they turned their back on us, Somalis, which I believe it was the Somalis who helped with the Cold War to win for United States.
Now, of course, we're also joined now by a second guest, Mr. Abdul Qadir Abdirahman. He is with Somali Cause, which is an umbrella organization. Somali Cause is an umbrella organization comprised of different organizations of Somalis here in the diaspora. And of course, Somali Cause itself works towards educating the world about the plight of Somali people and to provide an alternative to, as they say, to the bankrupt tribal and regional politics. Abdul Qadir, I'm so glad we could finally hail you. Welcome to Africa Now.
Thank you, Kenji.
Now, I hope at least you had a chance to listen to our other guest in the studio here, Mr. Muhammad Ali with the Somali American Peace Council, and he was characterizing for us what the background to this whole crisis, if you want to put it that way, in Somalia. Could you tell us, as succinctly as you can, what you think the essential problem is in that country?
Thank you, Kenji, and thanks, Brother Mohammed, also. the issue about Somalia is as simple as you really want to put it. Even though